ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hey, Jules and Jez here. Join us as we unpack the news of the week on Not Stupid.
But to your point, I do actually think there is something kind of fascinating about that success, but disturbing that Democrats have to get bitchy and puerile and kind of satirically narcissistic to take on a president.
You can find Not Stupid on the ABC Listen app.
And watch it on iView.
Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu have agreed to a new plan for peace in Gaza. The leaders were in furious agreement. The proposal, which will see the US president initially lead Gaza's redevelopment, is the best way forward. Today, Guy Ziv, Associate Professor at American University's School of International Service, on whether Hamas will really agree to the terms it wasn't involved in negotiating. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily.
So this is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization.
Guy, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump have a plan to bring peace to the Middle East. They're in lockstep on this.
US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have agreed to a new peace plan for Gaza and have warned Hamas to accept the deal or face the consequences.
Both leaders say that this proposal could bring an end to the war, and President Donald Trump believes this could bring peace in the Middle East.
And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East.
Just give me your initial reaction to this 20-point plan.
Well, the plan is far more serious than the Gaza Riviera plan that Trump announced in one of Netanyahu's previous White House visits.
I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
That plan was widely denounced as being completely a non-starter. For one thing, it called for relocating Gaza's 2 million inhabitants, and there were claims of ethnic cleansing.
Yes.
And it just seemed very fantastical. So this one is far more realistic. It enables Palestinians to rebuild their lives in Gaza, and it addresses both Palestinian and Israeli needs.
Okay, so we're going to step through exactly what's proposed here. But before we do, if Hamas says no to this plan, Donald Trump says he will fully endorse Israel continuing its war in Gaza, and Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will finish the job.
Then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done.
What do you make of those comments?
Well, I think the aim here is to, at least on Trump's part, is to pressure Hamas to accept the plan. And he has little leverage over Hamas in comparison to the leverage he has over the Israelis, but he has been pressuring and working with the Qataris and Turkey. And they have much more leverage over Hamas. And so the idea is to make it clear to Hamas that they need to go ahead with this plan.
All right, well, let's run through this plan for peace, and then we can discuss, Guy, whether it has any prospect of actually succeeding. So just tell me, what would initially happen according to this document?
Well, the most important thing is to end the war. So we've seen this devastating war that's gone on for 2 years, and both Israelis and Palestinians have had enough, and they want the war to end. The Israelis would like to see a return of their hostages. Some are still alive, others are dead, but all the families want to see them return. And Gaza needs to be redeveloped. And so that's an important element of the plan that, along with humanitarian aid that will proceed hopefully without any interference, there will be a lot of investment in Gaza, which will also be a demilitarized area. It'll be governed temporarily by Palestinian technocrats and perhaps some other international technocrats. So they're calling it an international transitional body. And eventually a reformed Palestinian Authority.
Yeah, and that transitional body, though, that would initially be chaired by Donald Trump, right?
Well, that's what he announced today.
The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it.
He talked about establishing this International Board of Peace, is what he called it, that would oversee and supervise the Technocratic Committee, and in addition to manage funding for Gaza's redevelopment. So I think some of these details obviously need to be worked out. There was a lot of talk, and still is a lot of talk, of Tony Blair playing a very important role here as well in this board. But let's see what Hamas has to say. Let's see which countries in the Middle East will play a role in this. So there are just a lot of details that have yet to be worked out.
Yeah, and the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, an interesting choice given he's quite disliked in the Middle East, isn't he, given his role in the invasion of Iraq?
Well, that was a long time ago, and yes, he definitely is still criticized for that. But he also has tried, unsuccessfully, I would say, but tried to work on previous Middle East peacemaking efforts. And so he knows the players, they know him. He's considered relatively close to the Israelis. And we'll see what kind of role he has. It might just be more of a symbolic role. I can't imagine him being the leader of the Gaza Strip.
All right. Well, as part of this plan, Guy, Hamas would have to disarm entirely, and it would play no role, of course, in governing Gaza in the future. Just tell me about those conditions.
Well, these are conditions that Hamas is going to find very hard to accept. Are they really planning to give up their weapons? Because after all, they are a resistance group and they're not going to continue to exist as one without weapons. And are they also prepared to give up all the hostages? They're supposed to, if they accept the deal, they have 72 hours to return all of the remaining hostages. And that's really their only leverage that they have. So I expect them to possibly accept the plan, but not as is. They're probably going to add some conditions that will be very, very difficult for the others to accept. And I think Netanyahu is also counting on them not accepting it.
All right. Well, Israeli troops, they'd still be stationed at Gaza's border, as I understand it, and it would be a so-called phased pullback of Israeli troops. So it's a tiny bit vague in that sense as well, isn't it?
It is, and a lot of these things can change. Netanyahu, for example, could say the Palestinians are not living up to their commitments, so we have to pursue, the Hamas assailants because our security is at stake here. So both sides can find lots and lots of ways to get out of this if they choose to do so.
What about the issue then of Palestinian statehood, which Netanyahu, of course, and his cabinet don't want?
That would be an outcome that, after October 7th, would reward terrorism, undermine security, and endanger Israel's very existence.
What does it say about that?
Yeah, I mean, how is Netanyahu's rejection of a Palestinian state going to be reconciled with this plan, which clearly calls for a future Palestinian state? There is kind of a two-state solution down the road. Otherwise, what's the point? And so Netanyahu has long rejected it, and he also rejects the idea of the Palestinian Authority eventually taking over. So these are two very important elements of this plan that we know Netanyahu opposes, yet he has accepted this plan. So it'll be very interesting to see how he deals with this, how he handles this, and how his coalition partners take to it as well.
Well, Guy, let's consider then more deeply the feasibility of this plan. While there are a number of conditions in this document that would likely be rejected by Hamas, including complete disarmament, there are also elements that contradict Israel's stated aims, aren't there? But does it just tick enough boxes, does it, for Benjamin Netanyahu to go along with it? Or, as you say, can he just wriggle out of the things that he doesn't really want?
Both.
Yeah.
I mean, he can claim, and he is going to spin this as a major victory for Israel, because all along he has stated that Israel's goals in the war was to defeat Hamas and make sure that they're out of there, and that the hostages return. So presumably that would happen. And so those are kind of the stated goals of the war. Now, that's not going to satisfy his right flank. I will say that Netanyahu does have the support of most of the Israeli public when it comes to this plan. There was a poll that found that 53% of Israelis, including many Netanyahu supporters, that support the Trump plan. And that might change, but I would expect if it changes at all, we're going to see more numbers, not fewer, in support of the plan.
Well, Guy, last week, of course, at the United Nations General Assembly, as delegates were walking out in protest,
please, order in the hall.
Benjamin Netanyahu, he did not in any way sound like a leader searching for a peace plan.
We're not done yet. The final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible.
So this is quite the turnaround.
No, he struck a defiant tone. He vowed to, quote unquote, finish the job and criticized those nations that he felt were unfairly pressuring Israel, and rejected once again a future Palestinian state. And he gave this speech as dozens of delegates walked out and earlier had made decisions to recognize Palestinian statehood. So this was no peacemaker that we heard just a few days ago.
So given that, what do you think? Do you think this is really a plan that will actually end this war, or will it give Netanyahu an out to actually continue it?
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. But I think we have to there's a very important factor here, and that is President Trump. So beyond the symbolism of all those Western allies recognizing a Palestinian state that frustrated Netanyahu, what we've really been seeing is a major diplomatic shift. And what these recognitions show is just how isolated Israel has become under Netanyahu. He's been driving Israel toward pariah status. And that leaves Netanyahu with just one ally who really counts, who really matters. And that's Donald Trump, which in turn gives Trump enormous leverage, which he's now beginning to use, it seems.
All right. But if this all fails, this all falls over, and that is a potential, of course, what happens in Gaza? What will we see, do you think? What will Netanyahu do?
I think Trump has made it clear that he is not going to go back to what we're seeing now. He seems intent on carrying this through. So even if it takes a while, and even if not all elements are going to be implemented, I don't think he is going to allow and forgive Netanyahu for sabotaging this. Again, that does not mean that Netanyahu will ultimately accept a two-state solution. I'm pretty certain we're never going to see a Palestinian state as long as Netanyahu is prime minister. But I think that we are going to see some of these elements, including this international force and kind of a new governance structure being put together in the months ahead.
But you say this is the first, I suppose, real positive step towards peace.
Without question, it's the most positive step we've seen regarding this whole situation since October 7th. And we've seen the international reaction, which has been very positive. Many of the Muslim and Arab states are very pleased with it, or at least outwardly seem to be very pleased with it. French President Macron warmly congratulated Trump for this deal and said that Hamas has no choice but to accept the plan. There's going to be a lot of expectations here that both Israel and Hamas will be expected to adhere to the deal. And of course, as I mentioned a few times, Hamas has yet to accept it.
Guy Ziv is an associate professor at American University's School of International Service and associate director of the university's Centre for Israel Studies. This episode was produced by Jessica Wukyanov. Audio production by Sam Dunn. Our acting supervising producer is Sydney Peed. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.